Hello, my name is Jo Palmer, and I'm the founder and managing director of Pointer Remote. We're a company that is passionate about supporting businesses and individuals from all over Australia, particularly those in rural areas, to leverage remote work. We support businesses to grow their team and individuals to either re-enter the workforce or to upskill in remote. We also work with communities themselves to support them to attract and retain populations and to increase economic development in their areas. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by Rebekah Lambert from Freelance Jungle. And look, Beck, I will let you introduce yourself, and you can, I've got a plethora of questions here to ask you. And so you can give us a little intro to you and what Freelance Jungle, well, we can come to that, but about you and how did you get to where you are to date?
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me. I'm a freelancer by trade, obviously. I do community and communications and coaching and all that sort of stuff. But the Freelance Jungle is my side project that takes over the entire of my life. And what it is a grassroots advocacy group, basically, for freelancers in Australia and New Zealand. There's about 6,600 of us at last pot. And we basically remind freelancers that stress has a productivity cost, that they're not alone. And also we do advocacy and raising the knowledge bar so that when you get a freelancer, they're not operating from a crappy knowledge level and they know which end of their ass to point at the sun, basically.
So how did it come about? How did the Freelance Jungle come about? Or actually going back more with you, what do you sort of freelance in? What is your key skills in your specialist area that you do your actually paid work?
Yeah, the actual paid work is in communications content and culture. So I do a lot of stuff in community spaces, for example, online and off, which ties back into my old work days. I actually worked with Lava Life for 7 years. And for those who are not aware of the product, it's a dating product. So I class that as the first ever sort of like real online community that people were having. And it's interesting because like once you've sort of worked with people in a dating environment, they're at their best and their worst. I think you can pretty much manage anyone else, right? So, and then from there I moved into client services. So I worked with agencies and stuff like that. And I was managing the entire of the Australian, New Zealand territory across about 2,000 different retail stores, putting most of the household IT brands that you know on the shelves in places like Dick Smith's and Vodafone and all that sort of stuff. So I'm really kind of good at looking at all the moving parts and shuffling people around and also solving their problems when they need boo-boos kissed. So that's how I got into the Freelance Jungle.
Cool. And so what sorts of industries are your over 6,000 plus sort of in the community? What sorts of areas of expertise are they experienced in?
Look, I think the predominance at the moment, we have a lot of writers. I don't know whether that's because my connections, how all communities grow is through your own. But there's all your stock standard ones like your web developers, your designers, all the rest of it. But then I've got freelance psychologists, freelance GPs. I've got a drag queen. All of these beautiful people, like someone says to me, I need someone to ride a unicycle while giving out leaflets. I'm like, I know the exact person for you. Right. So it's kind of like this weird, interesting thing that I've collected all of these people. And what binds us together is that love of being self-employed and just sort of getting out there and pushing ourselves through the projects that we do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so I'm assuming that those freelancers, they would ebb and flow from contract to contract. Would they pick up sometimes part-time permanent gigs that they supplement with freelance work? Like, is it a variety of ways that people are sort of connecting with that sort of work?
Yeah, it is. Look, a lot of people do it based on projects. So let's launch a website, we'll work on the website. But then there's also retainers and stuff like that. You know, the line between, I think, the traditional contractor and the freelancer has really blurred. I think in Australia, we still have a bit of a thing where people get it confused with gig economy workers. We are not Uber drivers. We're not pizza deliverers, and we're not going to do your logo for $20. We're sort of more here for the long haul. And I think, it's kind of interesting because the reasons why people got into this, Joe, are so many and varied. Most of the people that I have on Freelance Jungle got into it because workplaces just aren't set up for parents, right? no workplace flexibility. That workplace flexibility also knocks out the parents, anyone that's managing a health condition, anyone that's living regionally that might have to commute for work, anyone that's got a disability, people that want to have a little bit more flexibility and just be able to have more control over their life and all this sort of stuff. They all come together. And I think the other thing that sort of knocks it out too is that people have had terrible experiences in workplaces. Bullying and toxicity accounts for about maybe 12 to 15% anecdotally of what we hear. People have changed because they're not going to put up with being abused in the workplace anymore. Unfortunately, it's pretty bad. And they come to freelancing because they know they're a valuable person and that they can do better without those problems.
So interesting. We're talking to the same people. It's hilarious. So let's take it back to basics around semantics, I guess. So the difference between a freelancer and a contractor, you sort of touched on that, and Australia's sort of sluggish sort of I suppose pace to sort of differentiate and understand. But is there a difference between a freelancer and a contractor?
I don't think so. And I find that a lot of freelancers, they're kind of like little monkeys that swing from vine to vine to vine. They might do a contract to bulk up the money and get the steady pay, and then rock off and do the little one-off gigs and chase the late paying invoices a bit more with a bit more cash in their pockets. They might even do things like go and commit to working for somewhere for 12 months and then come back to freelancing, or still freelance at night while they're doing a full-time load. And a lot of them also have startups on the side. You know, these are sort of different kinds of people that are kind of squeaking the jobs in wherever they can.
No, that's really interesting. So what do you think then, if a business is looking at engaging people, and again, this is that differentiating between the freelancer and the gig economy, I think, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but from sort of our experience here at Pointer Remote and what I see and read, there's almost this like sites like you meant, like Fiverr or things where you're almost sort of you're bidding for the work, and it's sort of reducing the value of people's skills and talents and ability to do a good job in order to get the job in the first place, in that sort of bidding wars for the gig side of things. When a business, say a small business, for example, is making that decision to either go with someone like that for that rock bottom price and, that whole pay peanuts, get monkeys, through to putting on a contractor or a freelancer, what are the sorts of things do you think a business really needs to consider before they make that decision to go either way?
I think they need to make sure they've got the time to be able to engage the person properly. It's a number one rule that I say, even before you've considered where your budget's going to come from, because there is still management involved. It's a project unto itself. And I think also too, you do need budget. Like, don't sell yourself short and your business short by saying, yeah, bob or job will do. I mean, it's just never going to work out the way that you plan. And I think also too, when you're hiring a person for a role, you do some kind of onboarding. You make sure the email's set up. If you want them in the office with you, you make sure the computer connects to the network. You don't just leave them sitting there for 3 days drawing dust bunnies on the desk, wondering what the hell they've ever done to deserve this. You're proactive about starting them up. So with a freelancer, the same sort of thing applies. So know that you're ready for them. Have all of your internal discussions. Don't have the death by committee thing happen. Have one point of contact. Just have all of that single sort of stuff set up properly so that when the person gets in the door, because freelancers are very efficient. They don't like mucking around. They don't like wasting time. Make sure it's ready for them to push the button and start work straight away. Don't drag your feet.
And quite often you'll be paying a premium as well, that you're like, you don't want to be wasting their time. They're on an hourly rate or a contract rate. You want to be getting the pound of flesh from them. So, but listening to you, like, that sounds like realistically, when you're onboarding anyone into your business, you should have those systems and processes and where they're physically going to sit, or the tech they're going to need and the connection, all of those things. What do you think can, I suppose when you're doing that shorter turnaround, or you might have several contractors that are coming into a project at different stages and things, how do you make that onboarding process as efficient as possible? Because if you're especially bringing in people relatively regularly, and like you said, you've got to actually commit time to this, what are some things that you can, as like the business owner, can be putting in place to make that nice and smooth and that transition happen a lot more seamlessly?
Yeah, sure. I think the single point of contact is really important. And I think also too, whoever you get to work on the project with the freelancer, don't put Bob and Mary together because you're hoping that one day they'll actually get along. If they can't stand each other, don't force them to work with each other and then a freelancer, because then they just sort of become this referee in the middle, this really uncomfortable person. And have some coalescence with the project, have it set up properly with a proper brief. Don't just, have a freelancer and go, oh, well, we know we'll get to it if we have the freelancer. It'll force us to do that. No. Pre-plan, get organized, and have that attitude that you're going to have that person for a short time, so you're making it a worthwhile adventure.
So I guess as well that this concept of, well, I know you said you're not Uber drivers, but there's an element with a contractor or a freelancer that you can sort of turn it on and off like a tap, that when you're needing it to turn it on and you're getting them then in there and then get them back out of there when they've done that other section of the project or the whole project entirely. Do you think that it's something that you need to almost manage as like an ongoing relationship, even if they're not in the mix for say 12 or 18 months? Like, is that something that you sort of do, like a long lost friend that you touch base with every now and then?
Yep. And I actually encourage freelancers to do that with their clients, just check in on them and see if they've got any work hanging around, not just for the business development side of things, but to let them know that you're on their side and you were interested when you worked with them and you'd love to do it again, right? Mm-hmm. The relationship is important. And I think also too, like if you build a good relationship with a freelancer, keep their details. There's so many people that I've actually spoken to that have gone, oh, we had this amazing designer and we've never been able to find them again. Keep their details. And also, if you like someone, this is a really important trick, right? If you like a particular freelancer, ask them who they know, because we don't put our reputational butts on the line. Mm-hmm. We will only recommend the friends that will do the good job, because we want you to stay our client. So make sure that if you're looking for someone, ask your freelancer first, and if they don't know, then move on to your other processes, because chances are they will know someone.
I suppose it's like having a builder or a project manager doing renos on the house. It's using their trades as well, that you get the ones, and they also often enjoy working together and can get the best out of each other as well, which is awesome. So as far as welcoming people in, like, how can you really make that that new environment as stress-free as possible? Because I'm assuming that, like, even speaking to myself, like from my own personal experience, that when you bring in someone on short-term things, especially when you're a small business, especially when you're busy and you normally wait until you're about to explode before you get that extra help in, how, apart from sort of having the one point of contact and sort of being organized, is there things that can sort of be like, is there things to do on the first day, the first week, the first month, or thing that can sort of try and keep the environment and the relationship nice and relatively stress-free?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to actually view that person as not a top-down relationship. They're your equal. You've actually hired a gun. It's kind of like, all those movies where they hire the assassin, they pick the right person for the job because they can kick ass in multiple sorts of situations. If you treat a freelancer like you've picked a professional, they will be a professional. But if you start them off by saying, here's your little to-do list and don't do that, and don't put your sandwich on the same level as my sandwich in the fridge, which I've actually had in agency environments, because, militant about his food, you immediately take a step back as a person and go, I don't want to invest. But if you make them invest, freelancers are just great at doing that. They will just jump into the gap and really, really go for it. And also just basically set them up to be excited about the work and to be excited about being there. Make the effort to introduce them around and show them where the loo is, rather than just going, here you go, this is the office, I'll see you at lunchtime, which again happens quite with alarming regularity. Little things make all the difference to people when they're in an office environment, and that's how you get the best out of them, is setting up a culture that makes them feel like it doesn't matter whether they're there for an hour or they're there for 6 months, that they want to be there for every minute that they're there.
I love that. I love that concept. That's such an interesting thing, and I feel that I'm a bit embarrassed to sort of think of it, that analogy, that when you're hiring in for specific skills for a specific project, to really picture them at that top C-suite level, I guess, and that if anything, be asking them the questions and let them be doing the management and taking control of whatever aspect that they are.
Yeah.
I like that.
Seth Godin says it best when he's like, hire the right person for the job and then get the hell out of their way.
Yeah, I love that. So what are sorts of things that that you can do, that, because I guess that well, one, wanting to get good freelancers and contractors to keep coming back, if that's sort of the setup of your business, like how can you really ensure that trust is getting built over a period of time, but they can be doing, like, actually getting their best work out of them? Like, as far as the pre-prep stuff, obviously we've talked a little bit about, but how can you be getting the absolute, like, premium out of that premium C-suite that you've just pulled in?
Yeah, cool. I think the main thing, Joe, is listen, right? Because we can come in with a fresh pair of eyes and often see what your customers see, and see your business with a new way, without your jargon and without your investment and all of your bad habits. So if we come to you and say, you know, this project is great, what if we looked at it like this? Don't just shut it down because it's a new person and you're scared of your territory being trampled on, or who is this person? They've been here for 30 seconds. Freelancers are really good at assessing those sorts of situations, are wearing both the fresh eye hat and the worker hat to be able to build in a business. Many of us will actually stalk our clients before we land in the door, so that we know what we're talking about, because we know you have to sell ourselves quickly, right? So they've gone and had a look at things. So use that to your advantage, because they'll feel listened to. And even if you say, no, we're not ready for purple monkeys, we've got blue ones, we're happy with those, it'll come off in such a way that they will understand that you have actually listened to them, and they'll respect you for it. And you can respect them for adding value to the business by sharing these ideas with you in the first place.
I love that. That's so good. And you're right. It's almost like hiring in someone for a short period of time to critique and point out the holes in things. Because you're right, when you've got your head down, bum up in your own business, and your team gets used to all the things, and you can be quite good at patching over things, or you've made processes more convoluted and tricky than they need to be, and you can actually have someone that not just comes in and says, like your customer can quite often say, okay, well, this didn't work. You can have someone say, well, this doesn't work, but here, this is a solution, or here we can circumnavigate that to make this more efficient. I think that's a really added bonus to be able to take advantage of in there.
Absolutely. Most freelancers are consultants in some respect, and they can do that for you.
That's really interesting. So when you flip it on the other way, on the other side of things, so like a lot of the community that we deal with, obviously we're dealing with both sides of the employers who are looking to engage people either as permanent, full-time or part-time employees, contractors, freelancers, the odd gig in there. But we also deal with the other side of the coin. So we deal with freelancers, or we deal with people that are going in for short or longer term contracts. What are some of your tips, like just going again back to basics, like how can you then come in, make those good impressions? How do you make sure that the process of not only doing a really good job, but being liked and getting asked back like gets repeated time and time again? What are some of the tips that you're giving your freelancers to say, this is how you can actually not balls it up?
There's a few of those. Look, I think the main thing with freelancers is that they've got to ask questions. Don't be afraid of asking questions. You know, if you don't know the answer, don't try and wing it. Find out the information that you need. I think also too, the thing that a freelancer really needs to remember is that they should look at the project and protect the project at all times. Don't think about the personalities. Don't think about the internal politics. Don't think about all the things that are rubbing you the wrong way. Think about the project, what's in its best interests, and aim for that. Because to be honest, excuse me, that's what you're there for.
Mm.
And if you focus on that, you can't go wrong.
And that's what, I guess, as you've like you said, that's what you're there for, and that's what's going to be reflected when you leave, because the personality challenges are still going to be there. All the rubbing people up the wrong way is all still going to be happening there when you leave, especially if that was happening before you were there. So what about, like, as far as I know that, and I'm thinking more, again, in a personal sense, but more with my personal life rather than the business. Like, I think of tradies. We've talked about them very briefly, but I think of quite often as tradies being a freelancer in your life. And I think about how often it will take them months to invoice me, or like, it's not that I'm slow to pay, that I then, like, they come, they do the job, they leave, and then I genuinely forget about it because life goes on. And then I'll either get the odd, oh, hey, can you send me an email for an invoice, like literally sometimes 5 or 6 months later. What are some tips around that, like efficiencies and things, like, especially if you're doing lots of relatively short projects and things for lots of people, some efficiencies around that for individuals, especially if people are starting out, because I think that can often be quite overwhelming, is that people will say, okay, I'm quitting my job because I'm really good at the stuff I'm doing internally. I'm going to start my own business, right? I'm a freelancer. I'm going to now do this for other people. And then sometimes they really do hit the ground running and they get lots of work in. How can you sort of get things, how can you get things sort of sorted and a bit more organized from the start? Any recommendations around that?
Yeah, very many. Be proactive about everything. Right? Follow up. Don't wait for the client to deliver the assets. Don't wait for the client to deliver the invoice. Don't wait for the client to have to chase you. Always be in front of that chase. It sets a good premium. It makes them not sit there and go, wonder where they've gone. You don't want your clients thinking, I wonder where they've gone in any element that you do. Second of all, automate. For goodness sake, you can claim your bloody accounting software and your accountant on your tax return. Stop sitting at home screaming at your bass with an Excel sheet. What the hell are you doing, right? You're wasting money and your hours that you could be making money by doing shit that you don't want to do. And I think that's really important. Automate things. Also, don't fall into the trap of setting an unrealistic situation with your clients in terms of contact. Don't answer every email within 3 seconds of it arriving in your inbox. Don't pick up the phone every time it calls, because 6 months later you'll be going, I can never get any work done. All I'm ever doing is answering the phone and taking emails, right? If you set an unrealistic standard, it's like dog training. If you teach the dog it's going to be able to sit on the couch and eat chocolate, it'll sit on the couch and eat chocolate. Same with your clients. If you teach them they can get you any minute of the day for any reason on a Saturday morning, whatever, they will continue to do it. All right. So you've got to stand behind the standard that you're trying to set, and just automate everything that you can. So get people out of email and put them on things like Slack and Jira, so you can demonstrate that the projects are moving, that there are things that are happening, that it is in their pocket to review the project because you've done the draft or whatever. You've got it physically there in front of them. They get a little weekly email. Everything gets sorted out properly, right? Rather than having this whole thing where everyone's digging through stuff, trying to work out where the Google thread's gone or what email they've come from, or was it coming through Facebook or was it coming through text, right? Streamline absolutely everything and only have 2 single points of contact, one for voice and one for written.
That's good advice. How do you feel about then, I know that myself included, everyone's got their favorite sort of project management tools, and especially obviously we deal with quite often physically distributed clientele, and people like where there's options aplenty. If you are a stickler for Asana or Trello and you are starting with a new client, how do you navigate? Whose platform are we using? Do you have any advice with people to sort of what people going, especially those, again, starting early stage of freelancing career?
Sure. Look, what I do is with my software, because I do a lot of social media scheduling, I do a lot of project management and all the rest of it. I market it as a benefit to the client to use mine, right? I add them on and say, yeah, you can review your social media on my scheduler, this kind of thing, or I will send it to you this way, and then I will use my scheduler to take that hassle of you having to renew it and you getting all those alerts from them and all their sales emails. I'm looking after you by streamlining your processes. Right? Really easy to do. People will eat it up with a spoon because by the time they've gotten to a freelancer, you are 501 on a to-do list that has 500 things. So any way that you are invisible and still doing the work, like the best waiter in town just seems to know when to bring the bread rolls and seems to know when to leave the table, right? If you can be like that person, they will continue to work with you for 8 million years. And they would tell a difference. So that's what you should aim for. And it also gives you that process where if you set the processes, even if they've got one that says, well, this is how we work, you can come to them and say, okay, so I can work on your process, or I can do this. There's going to be an efficiency cost if I come over to your side, and that's okay. But just realize that I am actually faster when I do it this way, and I've got more tools at my disposal. I make a case for it staying in my hands because I'm a control freak and I love it.
I think that's really good advice, because I think quite often you'll sort of pick up, and I've done stuff with our business as well, where people have said, okay, well, we're doing this, and for a certain project, like we'd like you to use Basecamp. And again, lucky for us, we'd already had experience with that, but that's a really good angle, that efficiencies card. So yes, I can come on board with your stuff, but for this short-term project, I can be more efficient, and you'll be getting more bang for your buck if I just stick to my things here.
That's it.
Yeah, I like that. Do you find that you, as far as, and like that's an education piece, isn't it? That's educating your clients around how you best work, how they can get most value for money, and how the transition to receiving a project, churning it through and pushing it out can happen the most efficiently. Do you have like strategies and things that you talk about or that you see regularly coming up in conversation and stuff in your network around that management of time? You've already sort of talked about automation and outsourcing, like freelancers getting freelancers, or again, the most liberating thing I think was getting cost me $100 a quarter, and my accountant does my BAS. I haven't done a BAS in years, and it was the best life choice ever, because you can totally do so much more with your time that you, I ended up then paying more than that, I'm sure, every quarter for them to go in and fix all the mistakes that I was anyway. But yeah, do you have any advice or hacks that you're finding in your community around that time management and that client management and the boundaries things that you've been talking about?
Yeah. Time management, your biggest hack is whatever you think it's going to take you to do something, double it, right? Humans, psychologically, I've done research into this, have no ability to estimate time. We think we do, but we don't. And the reason partly is because we don't want to be aware of when we're going to die. So our brain actually switches off and goes, la, 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 time, woof, woohoo. And we always estimate at the best case scenario, right? I'm going to get this website done and written and launched, and it's going to be 6 weeks, and the client's pressuring me, and they want 4, but I negotiated them to 6, and I'm really amazing. And then 3 months later, you're still chewing on this website like it's a piece of beige cardboard that you just can't get down your gullet, right? Double the time. And also look at your clients and realize that you are 501 on the 500 things that they've got to do. And if they haven't allocated time for it, they will run late with assets. They will run late with the invoice. They will run late with everything else. And you have to be the dog trainer or the bondage mistress or the toddler tamer, whatever one works for you, and come back to them and say, Joe, I know I said I was going to start the project on Wednesday, but it's now Tuesday and you still haven't paid me. You do realize that we've lost 4 days because of that now, and I'm going to have to shift the deadline back 4 days. Keep them honest and accountable. Don't start working at midnight drinking Pepsi and energy drinks to match a timeline that's now flown outside the window. If you treat them like an adult and you give them boundaries and consequences, your client will respond in kind.
It's really interesting because you're so right, because especially when the like obviously it's fair enough if you've been the one that's changed the boundaries, then that's fine. That's a really interesting concept with the timeline when delays on the employer or the business ends of being what's pushing out your deadline that you gave them as well. You're right though. And the thing is, I think that we sometimes get caught up in this concept of like, you forget it's humans doing things, especially if you're dealing with a big organization that's like this faceless corporate, but you forget there's actually humans doing all the bits and pieces behind the scenes and having boundaries. And you're right, the toddler training, like I feel like I'm just coming out of the fog of small people, but that repetitive boundaries and the things that kids crave just makes for far more easy primary age children. I'm very much finding now.
That's it. It's consistency. Humans, and look, as much as we rail against being told what to do, it's actually healthy for us to have constraints. And if you build strong constraints and good consistency, you make amazing projects together because everyone knows the baseline. There's no big surprises. Somebody doesn't all of a sudden upset the apple cart and freak everyone out. And you can get the work done because you know exactly what to expect with each other in a short period of time. It's like anything in life. If people start surprising you every 3 seconds, you can't trust them, right? So if you get that right the first instance, you're apples.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Now, I want to go back to your community and Freelance Jungle and talk me through what sorts of things like you actually do as a community or the platform itself. Like talk me through how people that are engaging in your community are interacting and supporting or participating in the group.
Yep, sure. We do it on a different levels. So we've got the main group in, sorry, there's something in my eyes driving me crazy. We've got the main group as a Facebook group. So that works well for us. We consistently talk to people every day. There's content. We wake people up in the morning with something that inspires them to get creative and do their thing. We put them to bed at night, especially during the pandemic, because we found that everybody turned into the gremlins at night after a couple of whiskeys and a bad day and a ScoMo press conference, and everything would just go crazy. So we decided we're putting it and we consistently put out content to keep the education levels up high. We encourage people to ask questions. We have a no pitch ethos, so it's not about coming in there and selling yourself, because I think it's really important for community to build, like when you're in a small country town, because that's where I'm from a town of 200 people. When you're in those sorts of environments, you come together to have a chat. You don't come together to go, hi, I'm Bob and I sell cars. Would you like to buy a car today? Because it just doesn't work. No one will talk to Bob after that if that's all he says every time you see him in the street. So we try to build that sense of community so that people can come together. The genesis of this was actually a survey that I did because I was worried as a freelancer that I was making all the mistakes. And I came from a pretty strong background with high level account management, account director level kind of skills. But I just felt constantly like I was on the back foot. And I thought there's got to be something that I'm doing wrong here. So I put out a survey and I got 166 people coming back. And I found that the biggest thing that we had was we felt isolated. We didn't have someone to come and ask like you do at a workplace and say, hey, do you think this is the right call? Do you think the boss will go for this? I want to do this. How do I do that? Oh, my computer's just crapped out. I better call IT. All of these things that make a workplace efficient and make a workplace feel less stress, we don't have as freelancers. So I did what any good country kid does, and I put a call out and got everyone to come to the pub and talk about what we could do about fixing the situation. And so out of that came the Freelance Jungle. So we've done about 100 events, I'd say, in various different cities over the last 10 years. We've got the online community, we've got a website. We got recognised in 2019 by the Mental Health Matters Awards for continuing our contribution to workplace mental health, which was really, really lovely, and all that sort of stuff. And also we're with Facebook Australia and Give to Get. God, I always forget. Anyway, we got this wonderful grant. I still can't remember it. Oh my gosh. I love you guys though. We got this wonderful grant to build a redundancy program for people that were made redundant by the bushfires and under COVID, so that they could potentially come into freelancing, and get over that shock. So I'm currently building that at the moment, getting it ready for release. So that's the sort of thing that we do. It started off as just bringing people together for a beer and a chat and to get the stress going down by just having a simple conversation. And it's grown into this thing where we have education and people connecting up all the time. And, when COVID wasn't around, they'd get together for a meal or a coffee or whatever, just so that they had this place where they could go to that was kind of like a quasi work water cooler to have a chat.
Virtual water cooler.
Yeah.
Physical water cooler.
That's it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Oh, look, I'm just trying to think that, like, I think about just those bits and pieces you were just talking about then, the isolation that often people can feel in those early stages as well when they're working for themselves for the first time, and that inability to bounce ideas off, like, even just like, am I quoting enough? Am I quoting too much? Why am I not landing these jobs? Like, yeah, or am I landing all of these because I'm not charging enough? Do you guys go into that sort of depths of things around costing and pricing? Like, have you got any sort of advice and things again for those early stage people that are like, how do you even charge for what I'm doing? Like, how do I know I'm, one, worth this, and two, confident enough to charge a certain things? Because everyone hates talking about money, like, and it's like the absolute necessary evil of life, and we're all horrible about talking about it. Is that something that you've seen really leveraged in this community?
Totally. People are always asking, what should I charge for XYZ? And look, there's a guideline that you can do, but then there's also sort of a caveat on that, because what one person is doing and how long they've been doing it for is totally different. So I always say to people, take that with a grain of salt. The two things I always say to people is know what it costs you to do your business. Like, know how much you spend every year, how much it costs you to be in the chair, how much experience that you've got, and all the rest of it, so that you can feel confident about your rates when you're pitching them, and also confident when someone says, no, I think you should be cheaper. You can make a case for yourself because you actually understand, well, look, it cost me XYZ to sit in this chair. It's cost me this much to have the education to be able to do this as efficiently as possible. I've spent the last 20 years studying this, that's worth X. So I'm confident that I can charge you this money. And if I'm not the right person for you, maybe this person who's more junior than me is, right? So those kinds of things. If you know how much it's cost you to get to the level that you're at, it's easier to say, well, this is my price tag, right? The other thing is too, and a very simple trick, is if you're getting all of the work all of the time, you are too cheap, right? Your no rate should be at least 50%. 50% of people out there should be walking in going, Jesus, I don't know, at least I'm off somewhere else. It should be set up so that you actually accept that part of the people that come to you will not be able to afford you.
That's right. Really interesting. That high, 50%?
50%, yeah. Right. And like, because I meet all these people that say, oh, I'm gun at sales, I get every job. And then they're the same people that in 6 months' time are looking to go back to full-time work because they've completely burnt themselves out. They've worked 60-hour weeks. They haven't even stopped to eat. Like, I've talked to people that are sitting at their desk eating corn out of a can because they don't have the time to go and eat their lunch. And I'm like, what are you charging? And they're like, $30 an hour. And I'm like, that is why you're eating corn out of a can with no time to go to the bathroom. Right? You have to be sensible about this, because when a freelancer comes to you, and I wish all clients knew this, when they are coming to you, they are basically only going to get 30 to 40% of the money that they're asking you for. The rest of it is invested back in their business and paying their tax and putting their super aside, right? So if he comes to you and says, I'm $100, he's only getting $30 an hour. So if you say to him, no, you're only worth 30, he's only going to get $10 an hour. He might as well be at Kmart. You get more money. So it's about understanding that there is a cost to investing in someone's skills and all the rest of it. It's a fantastic story about Picasso. He's sitting in a cafe, he's sketching on a napkin, and he does it really, really, really quickly. And he goes to screw it up and put it in the bin. And this woman comes up and says, "Can I have that?" And he said, "Yes, $10,000. She looked at him, "Why is it $10,000? You're paying for every hour that I've studied. You're paying for every book that I've read, for every mistake that I have made in somewhere else's space. You are paying for every experience and every time I have thought about what I am going to draw for you. So that is worth $10,000.
Interesting, isn't it? I think I've seen like a few different the memes that kick around with, the $20 job, that it's like some crazed monkey sort of thing, to then the $1,000 job where it's actually penned beautifully. The drawing.
Absolutely. The half-drawn horse it comes around the face. We've actually had to ban that meme because so many people are like, "Look, it's the half-drawn horse. That's my life." And I'm like, no, we can't have that anymore.
Oh, that's so good. Look, I'm going to let you go, Rebekah. That's been so awesome. I'm just chewing over in my head, like that 50%. That's really interesting. 50% of people should be knocking you back because you're too dear. I like that.
Yeah. Really, you should have rejection letters like all the great novelists do, sitting there reminding you of the progress that you make, because to be liked by everyone seems to be the pinnacle in society at the moment, and it's actually pretty toxic to think of things like that. Learn from the rejections. That's what they're there for.
I love it. Where can people find you and connect with you and Freelance Jungle?
Yeah, easiest one is the freelancejungle.com.au. We've got the website there. We've got a directory of freelancers. We've got links to the social media and all that jazz. We've got a podcast and all of the usual things that everybody seems to have these days. But yeah, the website's the easy, cheesy place to go. And if you're a freelancer and you want to join the group, it's Freelance Jungle. And it's a group on Facebook. It's private, but you'll see it if you search for it.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
No worries.